When most people think how silly and ridiculous the United Kingdom has become in terms of legislation, they probably think of Scotland, where one man has managed to make international headlines. One Mark Meechan, who is a comedian. He's supposed to make people laugh, which is a very, very dangerous profession in progressive utopia. You see, just like a doctor, which does thousands of surgeries per year, and he is bound to make a mistake at one point, so too a comedian makes thousands of jokes per year, and he is bound to make a joke that is offensive at some point, and then the government crashes down upon him. You would probably be very successful in Britain if you started selling joke insurance. Basically, comedians should buy into the insurance, and they would pay a monthly fee, and the moment they do a harmful joke, an offensive joke, and they require money, they can cash in. Although it's kind of funny because there have been doctors which botched a surgery and they still manage to maintain their doctor's license. Like, they can still practice even doing a mistake. Because to err is to human, and when you deal with thousands of cases, at one point you are going to err. Not for comedians. I mean, they're held in much higher standards, especially in Britain. Yeah, I remember like the headlines. Every single headline was like Nazi dog pug man bad man, real name, power name, Mark Meechan. Now, all of you know what the guy did. He took a dog, which his girlfriend considered to be the cutest thing ever, and thought, okay, how can it make it funny? Like, how can you make a punchline out of it? Well, no one would expect something cute to do a Nazi salute. So if he does that, then the girlfriend is going to freak out. Yeah, the Scottish government freaked out. Even like the most leftist Americans that love licking the corporate boot, they will still say like censorship comes from the government. Well, there you go, poopsikins. There you go. You know what's even more funny? Like, if you look at the past, there was a similar case in Nazi Germany where a Finnish man, decided to give the name of his dog Hitler. Okay, now that's considered offensive. Like, most authoritarian regimes do not appreciate you naming your pets after the leader. And he also got the dog to do the salute. Well, it's kind of like Meechan, you know? And he was being persecuted by the Nazi party for mocking the ideology. Except that the Germans dropped the case because they consider it to be a waste of time, but not in Scotland. Not in Scotland. That is not a waste of time. That is actually good use of taxpayer money. So, given that I have brought you to the peak, that I have got you to the level of understanding what type of country we're talking about when it comes to ridiculous legislation, how could they have made it more ridiculous? Like, how can they escalate it a little bit further? Well, they've managed to pass a legislation which is going to criminalize hate crimes done into a person's private home. Now, it's important to make a distinction between what a hate crime is in the United States and what it is in Scotland. In the United States, it's a crime motivated by prejudice. So the key word is a crime. It has to be a criminal offense. Simply joking at the expense of someone is not considered to be a hate crime. Okay, what Meechan did, and if you were to do it in the United States, it would not be considered a crime, because apparently the United States suffers from that fascistic aspect of freedom and liberty, which allows people the ability to behave like assholes, because apparently in a free society, you do allow people to behave like assholes. The government shouldn't micromanage everything that does in a person's private, say it after me, private life, okay? Because a government that does that is a fascistic government. It's the ideology that nothing outside the state, nothing against the state, everything within the state. So even the things you do at your own home, even the things you do at the dinner table, now come under scrutiny. And as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So here you have a family that's violating the quarantine, behaving in a very irresponsible manner. And behind them are the key proponents of the legislation. You got Humza Yousaf with his very vigilant friend here. And they're very concerned on what happens in people's homes. Like, they can't sleep at night unless they know what happens in someone's home. It is absolutely a beautiful thing to see. I mean, the government does belong in your bedroom, doesn't it? It's the place, it's where the government was always meant to be. But finally, we have managed to become a progressive country and open the doors for the ever so compassionate and loving and caring government to come into our houses. I mean, why not? Why not? Because when you're old, who takes care of you? The government, of course. When you're at school, who takes care of you? The government, of course. So it's only normal that it should allow the government to come in. I like to call the Scotland National Party the same way the internet calls them, the Scottish National Socialist Party, because they don't seem to care about ideas that are more fascist in nature, like freedom, or liberty, or private property, or freedom of expression. Like, what are these horrible concepts? They clearly do not belong in a progressive world, right? They clearly have nothing to do with a democratic nation. We need to get away of these filthy principles and replace them with something else. Like, here's my question, okay? The idea that jokes normalize violence, right? Like, what is the problem with jokes? It will bring upon the Fourth Reich if you allow jokes to continue. And there's no academic study that proves this. There are academic studies that do say jokes lead to the Fourth Reich, but they say it with weasel words, like they may lead to, they could lead to, they perhaps somehow may. Well, if I held my hand up long enough, money may fall into it. But that doesn't mean that any normal person should hold their hand out, right? And by the way, here's the question. If jokes may lead to violence, isn't criminalizing human rights like free speech, freedom of expression, right to privacy, aren't all these leading to an authoritarian state? I'm using the same logic, right? Can I make a study that says this may lead to could lead to an authoritarian state? Now, apparently, this is really funny because, again, this is considered to be the most controversial law within Scotland ever. So people on social media were angry at Mr. Yousaf, and they were saying, it's like, okay, well, if I call you a gamer word, is that going to get me in prison? And Mr. Yousaf is like, excuse language, but the beauty of the hate crime bill, see, it's not something authoritarian. It's not something that doesn't happen even in other European countries. No. It's a beautiful thing, this hate crime. It's a work of beauty. Yes, I definitely think that it should be taken a picture of and placed in a museum so that future generations can also look at the beautiful law you just created. And the beauty of it is that you can insult politicians. So you can do the hate sprache against politicians, but you can't do the hate sprache against random citizens. So what's to stop a politician to pay an activist to parrot their talking points, and then anyone that criticizes the activist gets to be imprisoned under this law? And you will say, well, hold on, I mean, you don't have to use gamer words. Mark Michan didn't use a single gamer word. Like, if you make jokes, if you make insults, if you do not treat these people with the utmost respect that they deserve, even if they talk about infringing your rights, and even if they talk about restricting your freedoms, you can be guilty under this law. And don't get me started, okay? Because 5 years ago, if I were to ask common British folk or people in Scotland, do you think you can get arrested for training a dog to raise its paw? No one would have said yes. Just to show you how crazy and ridiculous the concept of hate crime is in the UK, at the end of 2018, so we're not talking about a decade ago, we're talking recent times. I know on the internet time flies, but it's quite recent. So at the end of 2018, a dog was accused of a racist hate crime for pooing outside of someone's front door. Do you know why? Do you know why this happened? Because if you look at the legislation, in order for it to be a hate crime, all you need is for the victim to perceive it as a racial incident. So because the victim perceived it as a racial incident, it is. Because that's the law, that's written. It's how it works. When you talk about the law, it doesn't matter about logic. It doesn't matter about what you think is normal. It matters what's written on the paper. So it says a lot about the people who wrote the law, who didn't account for this to happen. I mean, how much is a politician being paid for? You have to wonder. How much money do they get? Because they gorge themselves on the taxpayer dollar constantly, right? Even during lockdowns, they still get paid. Because their job is essential, I agree. But as a leader, they should have at least said, well, it's a lockdown, other people are suffering, I can't be seen taking all of this wealth. So at least I'm going to cut my wage into half. I'm going to show a sign of solidarity. I'm going to lead by example. If I can go to work without pay, so can the waitress stay at home without pay. But no, like they're not doing that. And you'd think that by the huge amount of wealth that they're making and the power and the influence, they would at least spend some time to write some proper legislation for this crap not to happen. But they don't care. Obviously, they don't care. Because all of this legislation, at the end of the day, is not to help minorities, but it's to help politicians. So that you can't criticize them. So that it's difficult to ridicule them. You think I'm lying? 2019, British politician Anna Soubry gets called a Nazi by some protesters. She freaks out. And because of that, the cops arrest the protesters. I mean, look at this. James Goddard, 30, pleaded guilty to causing alarm and distress using threatening or abusive language. So let's be clear, okay? They didn't hurt her. They didn't assault her. What they did is legal in other free nations. In the United States, you are allowed to call a politician a Nazi if you so desire. But not in Britain. Because these laws are not meant to protect the public. They're not meant to protect the little guy. That's the excuse. That is the reason that they do. The reason is to protect the people in power from criticism and from passing more draconic legislation. And yes, you know, if you are a person that legitimately thinks jokes lead to violence, you must also think, and this would be what a sane person would think, that such authoritarian measures lead to authoritarianism. And you get there step by step. It's not a process that happens overnight. Every single authoritarian regime throughout the world, if you believe they're evil, by the way, like, I don't know, in 2020, if we still believe, 2021, if we still believe that authoritarian regimes are bad and that freedom is good. Because I don't see it in the press anymore. I don't see the press criticizing any single authoritarian regime. The only thing they criticize, at least in Europe, seems to be Hungary and Poland, which on a scale of authoritarianism is quite low compared to other nations around the world. But you don't see other nations being criticized. You don't see the press say why it's important to live in a free society. You don't see the press explaining why democracy is important. No, you just see articles about why equity is important, about other concepts that have nothing to do with democracy, freedom, or liberty, which I wouldn't even say they are taking a backseat. I think they're out of the bus by now. Like, even tolerance doesn't get mentioned. So it is what it is. It's kind of disappointing to see, you know, a country like the United Kingdom having this type of legislation being passed. I don't think it's going to solve anything. And by the way, when you criminalize laws like a dog shitting on someone's porch is now a hate crime, okay? It increases the statistics of hate crimes, doesn't it? Because all of a sudden you're going to have an explosion of hate crimes if you just lower the bar. And that's going to justify the politicians that allegedly fight against hate to get more votes. Because now people are going to look at the statistics and it's like, oh la la, look how much they grew over the years. But it's not that they grew over the years, it's that they changed the definition to allow more things that before wouldn't be considered hate crimes to now be considered hate crimes. So that's what's happening. And this is why I came to my channel, to learn. I educated you. I'm starting to become like a business, like a serious business. It's the duty of the corporation to educate people. Maybe I need to start a corporation. I need to hire someone, and then I can actually call myself a private company and I can do whatever I want. Let me know what you think. I'll see you guys in the comment section. And please thumb up the video. Helps my channel a ton. Do subscribe if you haven't. I'm gonna make you laugh. I'm gonna make you laugh, motherfucker. You're going to laugh after watching my videos if you subscribe. And if you really want some buyer's remorse, there's a link into the first comment. Okay, just scroll down, comment there, and you're going to get some really good buyer's remorse if you click on it. And I'll see you guys in the comment section. Take care.